And when you vote next week, you are not just voting for who the President of the United States of America is, vital though that question may be. You are voting for the leader of the free world.
Those words were spoken by the UK's Populist Party leader Nigel Farage at a rally supporting Donald Trump. And now, with a second attempt on Donald Trump's life, just a little while ago, the importance of this election has never been clearer. But is today's America a force for good or for evil? And does the Western world still deserve to be called free? Either way, an election is an opportunity to stand for the truth, even in corrupt times like our own. Cardinal Manning, a great 19th century churchman, and yeah, that's him there in the middle with the Dockers Union and the Great Dock Strike of 1889. Cardinal Manning once wrote, and I quote, "For more than 50 years, I have lived among the people. I have seen and heard and known their wants, sufferings, hardships, and defeat of their petitions and hopes, and my whole soul is with them." He continued, "I have only voted once, not to bring a man in, but to keep a man out who I believed would do mischief. My vote has never been on the register since. I have a contempt for politics," end quote. So here is the reality about voting. Sometimes we vote not because we believe in a candidate, but because we need to keep a worse candidate out. Sometimes we vote for a candidate despite our contempt for a corrupt or downright evil political class. And sometimes we vote simply because the consequences of not voting are unimaginable. Since March of 2020, men and women worldwide have woken up to the fact that our governments no longer serve God or the people. Our freedoms, our families, our jobs, and even our lives are held in contempt by those we elected to have our best interests at heart. Our governments are actively seeking to harm us in numerous ways. Here's just a few ways. Mutilating children. Tens of thousands of children have already been butchered in the name of gender-affirming care and a truly satanic ideology. And LifeSiteNews is among its most steadfast opponents. LifeSiteNews' defense of children has earned us a place on a hate list compiled by the Canadian Anti-Hate Network, just 2 months after we reported that Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau had donated to that very group. The so-called anti-haters have produced a guide on fighting fascism, the far right, and haters, which, in their eyes, includes you and me and everyone else standing up for life, faith, family, and freedom. This radical left-wing group accuses LifeSiteNews of being a far-right organization. We are, they say, anti-2SLGBTQ+, and, quote, activists who may target the community broadly or the transgender community more specifically, end quote. LifeSiteNews' only crime is to love all human beings and to respect each person as God made them, male or female, in His image and likeness. Deplatforming is one of the anti-haters' goals. They define it as preventing opponents from reaching an audience and destroying their ability to spread a message, recruit, and fundraise. And these people aren't above trying to fire, silence, and debank individuals like you for simply standing up for life, faith, family, and freedom. Truth has a power of its own, and in the end, it always prevails. Nevertheless, our opponents will stop at nothing to take control over the narrative, especially at election time. We are doing everything we can to help keep Christ in the election. So please, if you're a U.S. resident, text LifeSite, LIFESITE, to 50155 and give what you can today. Let's proclaim Christ is King together. Free and fair elections give ordinary people a chance to take back control of their nations. And so the globalists are determined that such elections will never take place. That's why Facebook has set up an elections operations center to mitigate what they call misinformation. As well as attempting to influence elections, big tech platforms like Facebook, Google, YouTube, and TikTok are censoring or removing accounts which they deem politically unacceptable. AI censorship is another area. The AI censorship industrial complex is the sinister collaboration between government agencies, corporations, and NGOs aimed at suppressing speech critical of globalist-aligned regimes. Former Trump administration official Mike Pence has warned of, and I quote, a new Manhattan Project being developed by the State Department of the Department of Defense and the intelligence community, end quote. Listen to him.
There's thousands of people who are working on this new Manhattan Project to constantly refine it. They're getting huge amounts of government money to do it.
Now take a listen to what he says about how we're moving from needing hundreds of thousands of sensors to something a lot more frightening.
You don't need hundreds of thousands of people to contain a narrative if you can simply use a few lines of code to blow up an entire narrative all at once.
He said that with these lines of code, the totalitarian regime of the New World Order will, or quote, could wipe out millions of individual acts of speech all around the world, end quote. All this should chill our blood. If our enemies succeed in establishing their AI totalitarian system, the free flow of truth will cease. And then there's the depopulation agenda. Many of the world's most powerful think that there are too many of us on the planet. Leading globalists want to eliminate 7 billion people like you, and more than 1 billion babies have already been murdered by governments and corporations, and they plan to intensify the killing via abortion in the months ahead to meet their population targets. And they are also coming for the elderly and disabled. The euthanasia industry has won the right to kill around 400 million people worldwide, including in major Western nations like Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and some U.S. states. Thankfully, most U.S. states and many powerful Western nations like Italy and the U.K. continue to resist the death lobby's pressure on the euthanasia front. This resistance is only possible because organizations like LifeSiteNews have succeeded in making the facts about euthanasia more widely known. But if truthful media goes offline, there will be nobody left to hold back the crimson tide. And then there is, right now, the risk of World War III. AI technology and new methods of censorship could be put to devastating use if war breaks out. And if is quickly becoming when. The Russia-Ukraine war continues to cost hundreds of lives every day, and NATO is being drawn deeper and deeper into the conflict. Poland plans to double its armed forces, and Germany is considering conscription for all its young men. In the Middle East, Israel continues to pound Gaza. Leading politicians are assassinated. Pagers and personal devices are being detonated in Lebanon. And Houthi rebels disrupt international Red Sea trade. The world is a powder keg, and one spark could set it all alight. With 2 attempts on one candidate's life, we are always one bullet away from chaos. But in these terrifying times, we must be clear where our true hope lies. Jesus Christ is our only Savior. There are no saviors among politicians. Whatever the outcome of the next U.S. election and upcoming elections all over the world, LifeSiteNews' fight for life, faith, family, and freedom will go on. If LifeSite News is to have the capacity to continue in the face of the growing attempts to shut us down, we must launch a major new technology project right now. This major project will put in our hands the same technology which is used to evade the Great Firewall of China, which the Chinese Communist Party uses to control the internet and block access to websites that these enemies of faith and freedom don't want people to read. This new technology will mean that even if internet service providers or governments attempt to block LifeSite News, you will still be able to access all our websites. Given that the Canadian Anti-Hate Network, which receives tax dollars from the Canadian government, is already advancing its plan to shut down LifeSite News, we need to be ready when we face similar attempts in the USA or in other nations. We must make ourselves resilient enough to withstand whatever they throw at us. However, the development alone of this absolutely crucial technological solution will cost $250,000. And that's why I need to call on your help today to support this urgent project with a financial gift. That's why it's so important that if you support our vital reporting, you head over to give.lifesitenews.com today to donate to the fall campaign. And as you can see on the screen, if you are a U.S. resident, you can text LifeSite, LIFESITE, to this number, 50155, and give whatever you can today. Our opponents are terrified of LifeSite News because every day we bring more people to the truth. If we can stay online, accessible to millions of people, our opponents will certainly lose. That's because the truth is always much more powerful than lies. They need to deplatform groups like LifeSite News because they know that if we are allowed to tell the truth, even their own supporters will be convinced by what we have to say. That's why it's more important than ever to bring our message to the whole world. And with your support, we can do just that. But LifeSite News is not only a powerful presence for truth online. We are also proclaiming the gospel in the streets. That's why we have been putting up billboards proclaiming that Christ is King everywhere. Those huge 14-foot by 48-foot billboards are giving public honor to the true King, Jesus Christ. And so far, we've put these billboards in 4 locations. Each one has been viewed hundreds of thousands of times. This image of the Sacred Heart belonged to my dad. And as a child, I always felt the Lord's eyes following me. Wouldn't it be amazing if we could bring people beneath the loving gaze of Jesus Christ in all 50 states of the Union and in Canada? Our proclamation that Christ is King has the power to touch even the coldest hearts. As America goes to the polls, we must remember that Jesus Christ is our ultimate ruler and Lord. The social justice warriors and enemies of truth are often broken people, psychologically and emotionally fragile. They need Jesus Christ. They need his gospel. Deep down, they know that Christ can make them whole. But like sick children, they're afraid of the medicine provided by the divine physician. And that's why they want us silenced, censored, and suppressed. And that's why we must continue to love them and continue to proclaim all the louder, Christ is King. These billboards are being funded by supporters like you via our Life Funder crowdfunding platform. But unless this fall campaign goes well, we're not going to be able to keep up platforms like that. You can see the text to donate instructions on the screen below. Just text LifeSite, LIFESITE, to 50155 and go from there. Will you support the mission of LifeSite News as we proclaim the kingship of Christ? It is notoriously difficult to fundraise at the moment. And with the cost of living crisis continuing to bite, That's even more the case this year. When I was on the phone with our finance director, he told me that LifeSiteNews' expenses have continued to increase over the past year. But the needs of the cause mean that we must complete these projects as well as maintaining our full output before November. That's why I have to ask you for your help today to support this urgent appeal. Modest but essential donations in the order of $35 or $50 or $100 or even $500, they actually make up the bulk of LifeSite News' funding. And without these crucial gifts, we could not go on. We could not go about our day-to-day business of telling the whole truth about the attacks on life, faith, family, and freedom. Larger donations of $1,000 or $2,500 or $5,000 or more will have a very significant impact, as the demand for more staff time and even additional personnel must also be considered. That's why I urge you to help LifeSite News continue this fight. Funds are needed urgently. Please donate today if you can. One last thing. Lies cannot defeat the truth in the end. Every day, LifeSite News brings victory one step closer. And this is why they are determined to shut us down. But with your support, we can stay online and bring the globalists' international reign of terror to an end. So please give today. Thanks again, and God bless you.